This right here, Destiny's art quality went down. D1 versus D2. This is what I want to talk about today, simply because we recently did a video looking at Plaguelands in D1 versus D2, and the comparison was crazy. All right? The comparison between D1, look at this. What? They're absolutely not cooking, dude. How is it that a game that came out on a damn PS3 in 2014 is outdoing a game in the big 25? How? Let's jump into this video and see what we're talking about here.
Destiny and Destiny 2 are quite different from each other. Oftentimes, people ask what the differences between the two games are, but the average Guardian doesn't really articulate these differences too well, and they just kind of resort to the games felt different. So in this video, I'm going to go over all the major differences between the games, covering art, sound, gameplay and game feel, level and game design, progression, balance, and other miscellaneous things I could think of. This is going to be a very critical comparison between the two, focusing more on objective things rather than subjective, so keep that in mind.
All right, I already love the premise. Let's jump right into this.
Starting with one of the biggest, art. Now there are two things that go into a game's visuals, the graphical fidelity and the art direction. Most people know that graphical fidelity just means something looks more detailed than the other, but art direction is...
Look at that beautiful tower. My God. Just look at that for a minute. God, the D1 tower was so goated, dude. Oh my God.
Direction. Most people know that graphical fidelity just means something looks more detailed than the other, but art direction is how you actually cater your art to work together. It's the reason a game like Minecraft with very simple graphics is loved by many, because it has such a strong art direction, even though its fidelity isn't the best. So, with that knowledge, Destiny 2 undoubtedly has better graphical fidelity than the first game.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the hardware difference. Obviously, it's going to be better. You know, if you went back, all the way back to the original Marathon, the graphic fidelity is trash just because of age, right? It's just the hardware more than anything. And when you look at the art style of Destiny 2, which, it's been adulterated a little bit now that Darth Vader is roaming around the tower, I don't think that D2 does as well as Destiny 1 did.
Two of the same guns, put them side by side, and it looks more detailed than Destiny 2. The same goes with armors and specific environment pieces, like looking at the same rock or looking at the same staircase, and it'll look more detailed in D2. Again, it's no competition that D2 has better graphical fidelity than D1, but here's the thing. D1 undoubtedly has a better art direction than Destiny 2. Let's go over some of the locations and simply compare things that are in both the games, as that's the most fair comparison. Starting with the moon. In Destiny 1,
the other element this is not just the art direction and graphic fidelity, but I feel like the lighting is really key. And in Destiny 1, when I go back to it or when I see clips of it, it feels like the lighting is much more intelligent and it adds meaning to the art versus D2 lighting, which is just not as good, at least. It's just not as good.
You can see the color, lighting, and skybox of the moon looks really nice. Go over to the exact same location in Destiny 2, and the moon looks more detailed, but it becomes a dull, colorless surface. And the skybox, while not devoid of detail, takes a big hit. On the moon in D1, you can see large orbital space stations in the sky. And in D2, it's simply gone. The same continues with that.
Hey, what the hell happened to that?
Hellmouth with its green pits, portals, and fog, making the area look epic and eerie at the exact same time. This loses most of the particle effects and becomes a more simple area with just basic green fog and no other visual effects in Destiny 2. It's a little sad, but in some comparison videos they show Destiny 1 on the old gen, like PS3 and Xbox 360, then it's regular or upgraded graphics, which most people experienced on the PS4 or Xbox One, and then they show Destiny 2's graphics, and you can clearly see the downgrade of the art style. And because I know some people will mention it in the comments, I tested...
God, that one. The one on the right looks terrible.
Tested every single area that I saw in other videos just to make sure they were accurate, running them on the highest settings in Destiny 2 on PC, so this is as good as D2 can look. Destiny 1 had skyboxes with day and night cycles as well as different weather effects.
Dude, so much better.
Allowing you to see different areas at different times of the day. And this was the case for all planets. Day and night in the Cosmodrome, a day and night on the moon, with a more dark blue at night, and brighter grays as the sun shines down during the day and night on Venus with different storm and weather patterns, even interactive stuff depending on how you hold.
Dude, sorry to make a crazy tangent, but this unlocked a core memory. Do you remember back in the day when you had to find patrols from like a third-party site? What happened to that site? Remember that? You had to like, go to this website. It had like they showed you the public events. I remember roaming around that space that he was in, and I remember being on the site like, "Where's the next public event at?" Dude, that you're a real OG if you remember DestinyPublicEvents.com, dude.
Hold your weapon, you can hold it up to the sun, and you can even see it a little bit better with a little bit of that red shining through. It's pretty cool. On top of that, as time goes by, the skybox changes with the sun changing its position. Destiny 2 simply doesn't have that. To D2's credit, it does have the sun rotating around in the moon skybox, but that's it. On top of that, the details in the distance allowed for the world to feel large and expansive in D1, and most of those are simply removed in D2. And this is the case for both the Earth and locations on the moon. Wind and other effects that made the world feel beautiful and alive are mostly gone in the second game as well. And sadly, it gets worse as you take into account other world interactions and VFX. Both games have ripples as you jump in the water or wade through it, but D1 has these ripples or wind effects as you ride over with any sparrow. D2 simply doesn't. Rainbows can be seen depending on the lighting and angle you're looking at waterfalls. Not the case in D2. The lighting in D1 was very deliberate. Just look at how the Court of Oryx at the start of King's Fall looks. In Destiny, you have those eerie colors, the lamp at the top swaying, changing the shadows in the room, and the green and orange creating a strong contrast, making the ship feel like this eerie hive insect location. You can just see that in every nook and cranny there is attention to detail everywhere. It's
so much better. Here's the thing. I know I'm not biased because I would do a test. I would do a blind test, no guns in hand, just a screenshot of any area, and I would tell you which one looks better. And I would be willing to bet if you took 100 different screenshots from D2 and D1 and showed them to someone, D1 clears at least like 98% of the time. Like at least 98% of the time, D1 clears.
Area in D2 looks like this. Again, this is on the highest settings. You can see it's just dull and gray with no additional detail or lighting at all.
What the fuck happened? How did you uncook? How do you cook and then uncook? We're inventing new ways to throw in video game development, Bungie.
Looks as if the models were just ported in without texture or color. Everything that made that scene work in Destiny 1 is completely gone now. Even in areas where they implemented everything really nicely, like the outside of Vogue. Still has more lightning, clouds, and attention to detail in the first game. I already covered this area a little bit, but I'll mention it again and show more one-to-one here, where you can see the lightning that lights up the surrounding clouds in D1, not in D2. The meteorite showers can change size and locations in the first game.
I think we got the wrong vision altogether. I think we think that graphic fidelity is way better than art style. Like art style and lighting. Art and lighting is way better than graphic fidelity. I don't give a shit if the little blade of grass has like a couple more lines on it and details. Like D1, way better art. Way better art.
Again, not in D2. The blue sulfur on the volcano just looks better in the first game. I don't really know what they did in D2. And the sun can change location and move in real time, which additionally allows for day and night versions of the area when you run the raid. Again, not in D2. Little things like dragonflies flying around certain areas, or even butterflies in the garden areas of the tower, birds that fly away when you get close, or cockroaches that run away when you point your weapon at them. D2 has little things like this, like the fish in the pale heart, but these appear to be more random rather than interactive. It's not like there's no art direction in Destiny 2, but you can tell it took a heavy hit in comparison to the first game.
You know what I really want to see as a comparison too, though, is that they changed the lighting engine with Beyond Light when they did the big sunsetting thing. And I wonder what it would have looked like during that stage. We like almost need the cross comparison from D1 to Destiny 2 pre-Beyond Light and then Destiny 2 post-Beyond Light. I'd almost want to see all three side by side because everyone has told me, I didn't notice it as much, but everyone has told me that the lighting engine and there was a lot of visual problems that happened post-Beyond Light. So I want to see what happened before then. I think that's where they uncooked, basically.
While the lighting is more realistic and the graphics more detailed, it's also more generic. Even the devs have said this, that they focus more on quick content rather than quality content, which shows in the art. But environments
They said that? Who the hell said that? I'm not saying that guy should have got laid off, but goddamn, that is an insane quote.
Aren't the only things. what about the enemies, weapons, and armors? Well, with armors, I don't think I need to explain, as it's pretty much universally agreed upon that the armors in Destiny 1 just looked better than the armor in Destiny 2. And most of the best D2 armors are simply D1 armors or D1 reskins. Weapons are again more detailed in Destiny 2, like they straight up just have more detailed textures, but lack a lot of the particle systems that D1 weapons had. Thunderlord firing demonstrates this really well, where you can see more lightning and flash effects in the first game than in the second game. Enemy weapons follow this as well. A Hive Knight with the boomer gun will have his gun glow and have this mist emit from it in D1. It does this in D2 as well, but not to the same effect due to lighting. Muzzle flash from enemies firing weapons and lightning particles on the Dreg's weapons. These are pretty much the same across both games, but the servitor's buff is actually fairly different. The Taken have these scrolling textures, vibrant rays and particle effects, and twitchy animations, giving them so much personality. This in Destiny 2 has been changed to constant still textures, more basic beams and other VFX, and
Taken looking like some tweakers on fucking fentanyl on D1, dude.
More generic animations that don't twitch as much. The shapes and designs have also changed. Destiny 1 was very sharp, jagged, and had this dark and gritty feel to it. It was like a bleak world filled with a little bit of hope. The same enemies in Destiny 2 are more round and smooth, giving them a less menacing shape and design in most one-to-one cases. But of course, Destiny 2 does have some sharper enemies as well. Oryx is honestly a perfect example of this strange art change. In D1, he was menacing, had a dark color palette that was gloomy, handpicked to fit the mood and the
I've never actually compared D1 Oryx to D2 Oryx. Honestly, I'm scared of what I'm about to see.
Atmosphere. In D2, he's a vibrant and colorful character, essentially killing the ominous vibe that he had. Destiny 1's art direction, it's as if
they matched him to like the weapons that have the like white bone style. He changed so much. What the fuck? What did you do? Oh my god, go back for a second.
This strange art change. In D1, he was menacing, had a dark color palette that was gloomy,
I like the dark here,
to fit the mood and the atmosphere. In D2, he's a vibrant and colorful character.
He's like
essentially killing the ominous vibe that he had. Destiny 1's art direction, it's as if concept art had come to light, and I can't say the same thing about Destiny 2. There's even more to compare, but let's keep the topics moving since art isn't everything, as there's also sound design and music. Starting with music.
Dude, the bullets have ripples in D1. What?
Since that's the most subjective, both games have really good tracks. D1 has the most iconic music with the Destiny 1 vanilla song.
Dude, Salvatore cooked during this era.
Songs, but I'd say both are still top notch, and again, this isn't as objective, so let's just keep the ball rolling. Sound design on
both the sound is good. Let's be real. The sound in Destiny 2 has been good. We let Salvatore cook in Destiny 2 as well. But maybe it's just nostalgia. Maybe it's just, you know, Destiny came out first. There's something about the OG. I mean, we literally just went back to that as our title screen for a reason, right?
On the other hand, can be taken from a more objective look at. Both games take a very different approach on the way they do their sounds. The first game has more realistic sound for gunfire from your more real-ish looking weapons. Then the futuristic ones like the Omlon would have a more high-pitched, futuristic type sound to them. And other weapons like Hake would have different sounds when they fire their pulse rifles or whatnot. Destiny 2 leans a lot more into that futuristic sound design, where pretty much all weapons have that high-pitched futuristic sound to them. The Ace of Spades demonstrates this so well, because it sounds like this in D1, and it sounds like this in D2. A very clear difference, and this isn't the only weapon.
I had never thought about the difference between Ace and D1 and D2, and I like D1's better.
You can just hear with both of these exotics that it sounds much higher pitched in D2 and leans more into that kind of Omlon futuristic type sound. Abilities also follow this trend too, with the Titan jetpack sounding like this in D1, and like this in D2. Of course, the Hunter jump also follows this as well. This change in sound
I actually kind of liked the D2 Hunter jump more.
direction for the common stuff you'll be hearing on a daily basis when
Let me know what you think. But honestly, all this tells me is that we need D1 remastered. That is what we need, D1 remastered, all right? It's time to cook this up. And don't let these goofballs that are running D2 now pull that off. I'm talking hire the OGs, the ones that made it. Bring it back.
playing the game isn't really a positive or a negative in a vacuum. And I say this as in a vacuum. The reason for this is because Destiny 1 has a very large range in sounds that you'll hear. Thrall are high-pitched, certain taken attacks are high-pitched, and some of the weapons
Someone said yes, Portal and D1. Mods, ban that guy.
you shoot are also high-pitched. But to balance out this higher range of sounds, there is many deep sounds in the game, like certain guns, grenades have a deep echo, rocket explosions have that huge sound, giving good variety.
Dude, those cluster bombs pop off. Oh, he didn't even shoot a cluster bomb rocket?
Destiny 2, in the pursuit of its futuristic sound design, loses much of that variety. Here are the same set of sounds in Destiny 2.
I actually like that for the sniper.
Now, I will admit, even with less range and sound, it's still subjective as to which game you personally like the sounds of better. But you
No, it's not. D1 was better. Admit it.
can't really deny the fact that Destiny 1 has a more dynamic range. Continuing with the argument of sound design, let's start taking into account ambient sounds and interaction sounds. This is how the Cosmodrome sounds in Destiny 1.
I remember this. It was very menacing, ominous sound roaming around here. Ooh, I actually like this though. Ooh, I like this a lot.
And here it is in Destiny 2.
Alright, that's terrible there. But comparable, you know. I don't
You
know,
can
it's-
clearly hear that a lot of the details like the wind and dust sounds, it's just gone in Destiny 2. And again, this is the case with every location. Destiny 1 just has more ambient noises. As far as interactive noises go, like footsteps and sparrows, they change depending on the surface you're walking on or riding on in D1, as you can hear in these clips.
It's not as loud, but you do still hear like the same types of elements, the splash, the metal clinking noise.
If you're in
quieter.
a stasis field or something, the way your gun sounds actually changes as well. On top of that, your gun's echo even changes depending on the size of the room you're currently in.
Whoa. What the hell? The audio reverberation is crazy different based on the size of the room.
You might have already guessed it, but this isn't the case with Destiny 2.
Wow, that is a crazy difference too. You really notice it, and it makes the feel of the game feel so much better. It's crazy that D1 outdid them in that audio section as well.
Basically, the sound design and additional audio you hear in D1, when we compare the exact same sounds in the exact same location, is just more immersive than it is in D2. Moving on to gameplay and game feel. The gameplay is very different across both games. D1 is simpler and D2 is more complex in the abilities and weapons you have in your arsenal. Many people like to say D2 is faster paced, and they're correct in some aspects, but incorrect in others. More frames flashing in front of your face doesn't mean faster. Weapon reload times are pretty much identical when comparing.
When you extend your FOV, the speed at which you visually look like you move is crazy different. And obviously in Destiny 1, you couldn't extend your FOV as big as you can now because of technological limitations due to being on console. But now you're on PC, and with all the additions we've had, you can make your FOV a lot wider, and it makes you feel like you're going a lot faster, that's for sure. It's crazy the difference.
The exact same weapon. Weapons actually swap a little bit faster in D1 when comparing the exact same weapon. Weapon scope times and the time it takes for the reticle to reappear is faster in D1. Weapon firing is about the same. The Titan skate and jetpack is...
Well, I mean, it might be faster if you compared a one-to-one weapon, but there's other factors, like obviously certain weapons can have perks on them. So basically, even if it's a little bit slower by default in Destiny 2, it allows more agency, so you can like get weapons that have god rolls. Like you could get a weapon that has snapshot and it would be much faster, or maybe it has an enhanced snapshot or something like that, or maybe use other ways to, you know, enhance the handling of these weapons. So even if D2, for example, like by its base default had a little bit slower ADS speed than D1, that doesn't necessarily a bad thing, because that means it gives you more agency to grind for god rolls and to get weapons that allow you to have that super snappy feel that you want. And then there will be a much more noticeable difference between that default weapon that scopes in really slow or reloads really slow versus that tier 5 god roll, you know, perfect roll that reloads instantly and ADSs perfectly.
Is much more faster and mobile in D1. The same goes for the Warlock's movement and the Hunter's jump as well, when comparing their baseline in the way that most casual players will use it. Running speed is pretty much identical when comparing the slowest to the slowest. Turning times and overall movement speed is again pretty similar. And I know some people will mention this, both games have very high movement tech that are insanely quick. Now Destiny 2 has a bunch more other movement abilities in its arsenal, but again we're comparing stuff that is in both games, and in which case Destiny 1 is generally a little bit quicker. As for...
I mean, you could argue that when you're comparing the base values, but obviously there's more nuance to that, right? And so the comparison almost is trivial in that regard. I would say that Destiny 2, you obviously move much faster due to different movement exotics, due to eager edge swords and all kinds of stuff.
Game feel, there is more juice in D1. And juice is a common term used by developers, which just kind of explains how the game overall...
More juice? Hey.
Feels. A juicier game is generally better. The way weapons reload, pretty much none cross the center of your screen in D1 to not block gameplay. Weapons in D2 don't care that much about blocking your gameplay. Weapon swap and bobbing is a little bit more interactive as you jump and walk around in D1, making the weapon feel like it's moving with you. Destiny 2 is more mechanical and stiff. The melee attacks also appear to have a little bit more oomph to them. This is primarily because of the field of view rather than the actual effects in screen shake, because they're pretty much the same across both games. As far as game and level design, progression, and balance go, the levels in Destiny 1 are more simple and easier to understand, while also being more basic in their mission objectives. Destiny 2 has more complex levels and systems, requiring more movement in your gameplay. Raids are more simple in D1, and raids in D2 are more complex and mechanically heavy. Destiny is more focused on player skill rather than builds and weapons. There are for sure better god roll weapons that make meta perks to look for on your armor that will improve your gameplay, but at the end of the day, player skill is the most important factor in both PvE and PvP. Now, player skill is definitely important in D2, and I think the argument could be made that it is the most important thing in D2 as well. But the gap between the best weapons and worst weapons, or best and worst gear in D2, is so much larger than it was in the first game. So the trash weapons in D1 were still usable to an extent, but the trash weapons in D2 are just so much more trash. And the god tier weapons in D2 are just way more overpowered, which in turn puts slightly more focus on loadout over player skill in some situations for Destiny 2. Both games are difficult in their own right. D2 has more mechanics and systems that you have to learn, as previously mentioned. But in D1, you were more like a glass cannon, being able to kill very quickly but also die extremely quickly, quicker than the hardest game modes of D2. DPS and whatnot is relative, as you can one-phase the hardest bosses in D1 if your team is good enough, and you can do the exact same thing in D2. So while D2 has bigger numbers, meaning higher DPS, that doesn't actually mean anything significant when you translate it between the two games. Other miscellaneous differences are of course the game's monetization and update or content releases, where D1 only charged for the DLC and all other content and updates were given for free, funded by the Eververse shop. And of course everything in Eververse could be earned completely for free. Destiny 2 charges for the DLC, and all other content updates have to be purchased. That said, these updates are much more frequent than in D1. Then the Eververse is far more of a heavy focus in D2, but the items can be obtained through a lot of grinding. When D1 released content, you could do all of it as soon as you wanted, no drip feed included. Destiny 2 obviously has that drip feeding content, though this is changing in the near future. Here is where D2 gets a lot of wins with the numerous quality of life improvements that it has that D1 does not. Like multiple landing locations on a planet, being able to launch any activity without having to go to orbit, having a codex where you can see any and all weapons, armors, and gear within D2. D1 only had this feature for a couple things like ships, sparrows, exotics, shaders, etc. Speaking of shaders, shaders can be applied per item and even added to weapons in D2. There's appearance slots for armors, allowing you to look how you want. And I mentioned this a bit earlier, but there's way more weapon variety in D2, having different types and whatnot that do not exist in D1. Not only that, but the weapons tend to have a lot more wacky and unique things that they can do in D2. The same goes for class abilities, having more unique and wacky things that you can do, and a couple more improvements in D2 that...
Of course, I mean, we had 8 years for Destiny 2 now. I should hope that we have more subclass options. I should hope that we have more perk options. Of course, we have more exotic weapons that do more crazy, wacky stuff, and new perks that, and enhanced perks and crafted weapons and tier 5 weapons at this stage, right?
Are simply not in D1. Destiny 1 honestly does most things better when compared one to one, thanks to its greater attention to detail and care that just made the world feel more immersive and complete. Destiny 2 is a bigger and newer game, with more to offer in terms of gameplay and diversity, and of course having that next-gen benefit like 60 FPS and higher graphical fidelity. The purpose of this video was to try and give as objective as a comparison as possible between the two while going into as much detail as possible without dragging the video on forever. But there are probably some things I might have missed. At the end of the day, it is up to you to decide which game you like better, as they're both good in their own right. But hopefully this video gives you some super solid evidence that you can use to compare some of the differences between the games. I've got more Destiny content coming out soon, and other Destiny videos currently on my channel that I uploaded recently, so consider subscribing and checking those out if you're interested.
Great video. That was Destiny's quality went down, D1 versus D2, art, audio, and more. And honestly, that was a really good and a really fun comparison. Huge credit to them for putting this together. That was from Inviseron. I really like the comparison. I like the ability to look at the two games and see what they do well, what one game does better than the other, etc. Obviously, Destiny 2 has had a lot more time in the oven to build on itself. I've been doing this game for 8 years now versus Destiny 1, which Destiny 1 technically began its development, or at least Bungie split from Microsoft in 2007. The game launched 7 years later, and then it had its life cycle for 3 years. So Destiny 1's full life cycle would have been 10 years. Now, when was Destiny 2 being cooked up on that timeline? I don't remember when Destiny 2 was starting to be developed by Bungie, but it obviously would have been in tandem with Destiny 1. And they launched it, in 2017. And so it's been, what is it now? 8 years. 8 years now we've been cooking on Destiny 2, plus whatever time it took to launch it initially. The comparison is interesting. And another comparison that I've been looking to work on more is a lot of people criticize the Destiny 2 new player experience. I really want to relaunch into D1 and do the new player experience in 2025, and then compare it directly to the new player experience in Destiny 2 and see what they look like side by side. Play 1 hour as a new player in both. We'll probably do a video on that pretty soon. So make sure you're subscribed, and that's a wrap on this one. We'll see you in the next one. Later.